Okay, thank you, everyone. Then, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce the 2010 both World Cup finals and UEFA Cup final referee, Mr. Howard Webb. He is currently the general manager of the Professional Referees Organization, which deals with the refereeing in the MLS and other professional leagues in the United States, and to some degree the referees in Canada, but I'm sure he can correct me on that and be more accurate with that. Without further ado, Howard Webb.
Thank you, Donald, and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for allowing me to join your AGM this year and for the invitation. Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to spend my Saturday afternoon with you guys all the way from here in Jersey City. I've been hoping for an opportunity to come to Vancouver and speak, and obviously the only time I get invited is when it costs the BCSRA zero in terms of dollars in travel costs. So thanks, guys. But still, it's a pleasure to be here. Of course, yet again, we're going to be doing this over Zoom. It's not the same as speaking in person, but I still hope you're going to kind of enjoy the next. I think it's going to be 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever it might be. I'm not an instructor. You've got great instructors in that part of the world. I'm good friends with quite a few of them as well, and you can learn an awful lot from people in your local area who know the landscape there much better than I do. But I'm something of a storyteller. I've been exposed to some unbelievably interesting experiences in my career, and I've picked quite a few things up along the way in my time since I started refereeing 25 years ago. So I'm going to try and squeeze some of those into the next 30 or 40 minutes, and hope that you enjoy that little journey, and then we'll have opportunity for questions at the end. What I would say, if there's any issues with this working well, if you could send me a message in the chat, or Daniel or whoever, just tell me we can't hear you, or you've gone blank, or whatever. Just let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to share a screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm trying to present. And I'm not going to optimize it for video at the moment, so you can see the screen better. And then when there's a little bit of video, we'll go into the optimization for that in a short while. So let me start with that. Okay. I assume, guys, you can see that, Daniel or Chris or whoever is listening.
Yes, we can.
Cool. Excellent. Fantastic. So here we are. This is me at the moment, guys. This is me. I live in Jersey City, just over the water from Manhattan. It's a lot cheaper this side of the water, and I've been here for just over three years. I've been stuck to this apartment for the last 3 months. New York and New Jersey have been hit pretty hard by COVID-19, so we've been taking it easy. I've been jogging with my mask on and my glasses, which steam up, trying to stay fit. But we're healthy, and we're looking forward to getting started again. I hope all you guys up there are healthy as well, and taking good care of yourself as we go through this really bizarre period of our lives. We're going to get back to normal pretty soon, but we'll look back at 2020 with mixed emotions. It's the most unusual time of our life. So for me, the virus is not really the biggest threat. I'm only 48 years of age, almost 49. So I'm hoping that if I did catch it, I'd be able to deal with it. But the bigger danger is the fridge. It's only 10 yards from where I'm sitting here. And for me, the boredom factor means that I take more visits to the fridge than I normally would do. And I have to be a little bit careful in that respect. Trying to get this to move on. So yeah, I've said I've been here for 3.5 years, almost. I'm really proud of the job that I do here in North America. I work for Pro, a company that's funded by US Soccer and Major League Soccer. And we supply refereeing services to MLS, the NWSL, and USL. And we employ referees from the USA and from Canada. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Canadian Soccer Association about the number of assignments that we have to give to Canadians, because we've got 3 Canadian teams north of the border, and of course 1 over there in BC with Vancouver. We've seen big strides, I think, in terms of standards of officiating over the last few years. If you just look at the World Cup in 2018 in Russia, we were assigned to 51 positions during that World Cup, which is more than any other federation or any other competition that was represented there. And as recently as 2019, we had a team at the final of the Under-20 World Cup in Poland. So I think people are seeing that good referees are being produced from this part of the world, and that's been recognised when they go into international competition, which is the best way that we can compare our standards, I guess, with those around the world. And what's really nice is that I became general manager in 2018, it was obvious to me that we needed to bring in more new referees, more inexperienced referees, because the league was getting bigger exponentially. 26 teams, 28 teams, 32 teams very soon, I think, and clearly we need to keep pace. So even in 2019, the slide that you can see there shows the 9 officials who were assigned to MLS games who came into that year with less than 10 games in MLS under their belts, some with 0, some with only 1. And yet between them, they were assigned to 100 games. That's a quarter of all our games. And by and large, they delivered really good performances. So really proud of the fact that we've got a lot of less experienced officials making the grade, stepping up to the plate, delivering, including Canadians. Pierre Luthier down there had a game in Orlando against Chicago on the closing day of the season. And we're looking to utilise good quality officials, be they from the north or south of the border. We have a good collaboration with the CSA, and we're working hard to make sure that we collaborate. We look at Canadian games, professional games as well, in the CPL and in the Canadian Championship as well. Opportunities exist to get into the very highest levels in MLS through these channels. When I came to North America in March of 2017, first time I've actually lived anywhere abroad, so I thought I'd better try and adapt to the culture. So I started to go to the baseball up at the Yankees and became a bit of a fan. And I can remember one particular day I was in the office speaking to a member of staff. Our office is based in Manhattan with the Major League office. And I said to the guy in the office I was chatting to, look, I've taken a bit of a liking to baseball. I've become a New York Yankees fan. And he said to me, he said, do you realize, Howard? He said, most people who support the New York Yankees don't really know much about baseball. He said, it's a bit like being a Manchester United fan in football, which is quite ironic because most people think I am a Manchester United fan, which is not actually true. This picture was one that was posted after a particularly difficult game against Liverpool back in 2011, posted by this guy, a guy called Ryan Barbel. Ryan played for Liverpool, is a Dutch guy, and he wasn't impressed with my performance. And I can kind of understand why. He was the first person to be fined by the Football Association for abuse of social media in criticising a ref. He was fined about £100,000, I think. And looking back to that particular day, though, I didn't cover myself in glory. The game itself was a really important game, a big game between two giants of English football, Liverpool against Manchester United at Old Trafford, FA Cup, 3rd round, quite a significant date on the football calendar over in England. And this was the highlight of the round. And I'd been assigned to it. And, I was in a phase of my career where I was, picking up a lot of big games, feeling pretty good about myself, taking things in my stride. And this game learned me a lot. You never stop learning, ever. You're always learning as you go along. And as soon as you think that you've made it, something hits you and clearly tells you that you haven't. And you've got to keep working hard and doing the basics right. In the very first minute of the game, Dimitar Berbatov, playing for Manchester United, burst into the penalty area after about 30 seconds, being pursued by Daniel Agger of Liverpool, and then hit the deck under contact from Agger. And I was taken by surprise at the decision that was being presented to me. And as a referee, it's never good to be taken by surprise. A real skill of an effective and efficient and talented referee is to have good cognitive skills where you can almost read things that are going to happen or anticipate things that are going to happen before they do. And you do that, you create that skill through numerous methods. First of all, by refereeing lots and lots of games over a period of time, you train yourself what to expect. You learn how to trust your gut feeling, feeling that develops over many games and many decisions. Because every time you make a decision, you get a reaction. You get a reaction within yourself based on the way that you're feeling about that decision. The player reaction tells you whether or not it's a correct or incorrect decision, or more than likely a correct or incorrect decision. You get a real strong gut sense about that decision. And then if you're watching games back on video later, you can confirm that gut feeling with what you actually saw. And time again, I realized that if I follow my gut, I'm more likely to be right than not. So that's one way. You also prepare yourself properly. This happened in the 30th second. It taught me quite clearly something that I already knew, but you emphasise the fact that you've got to be ready from the very first whistle. You've got to be ready from the very first moment that the whistle is blown. You can't ease your way into a game like a player maybe can. You've got to be ready for that biggest decision of the day with the first decision you make. So what do you do? As soon as you get the assignment, you start thinking about the game. You start thinking about the participants, about the location, the venue, about where the problem areas are going to be based on your knowledge of that team. You do research if you're able to do so, if there's data to be researched. And then you ask colleagues as well about those teams. You ask colleagues about their experiences and you learn from that. And then when you get to the stadium, you don't just like aimlessly walk around the field. When you do your pre-match inspection, you're going to do that in a certain way that puts your mind into the game environment. You're going to walk around in a way that, it'll move around in a way that replicates the way you're going to be officiating in the game, thinking about problems that might come up in the game, thinking about decisions that you're going to be making, where you're going to be when you're making them, how you're going to get from A to B, where you're going to be looking over to your assistants. And then, of course, you do the usual pre-match instructions with your colleagues. You don't cut corners. No matter how many times you've worked together, you do things right, so that everybody knows their roles and responsibilities. And then when you hit that first whistle to start the game, you're ready for something that's going to come along, so that your cognitive skills and your gut feeling is there to be relied upon. I'm just checking that's good. Okay, just checking that nobody's trying to hit me with any questions. So here I was. Berbatov hits the deck under pressure from Aga. I'm not sure how much contact there is. I think to myself, oh my goodness, what happened there? And I'm trying to run it back in my mind. It's a really bad place to be as a ref. And I thought, yeah, there was contact. Yes, he's hit the deck. It must be a foul. I blew the whistle and pointed to the spot. One of the things that we experience as referees, we get instant feedback from the players. I've mentioned that, and that's not always a good thing, but quite often it's something to learn from. The instant feedback I was getting from the players that day suggested to me that I'd probably seen a bit too much, and that it probably wasn't as clear a penalty as I'd calculated, assumed it was. When it is a penalty, the best thing that can happen when you're getting that feeling that you've probably got something wrong is for the penalty taker to miss and put it wide, and then we can move on. Ryan Giggs took the penalty and slotted it home to make it 1-0, 1 minute in to an obviously controversial penalty. Not a good start. Not where I wanted to be. 20 minutes later, Steven Gerrard put in a 2-footed lunging tackle on Michael Carrick near the halfway line. One of the things you've got to be prepared to do as a referee is make unpopular decisions. You've got to be prepared to make calls that aren't going to necessarily go down well, not going to make your life easier, but you have to be prepared to make unpopular calls. And I knew it wasn't going to be popular to send a Liverpool player off, the captain, their best player at the time, Gerrard, put them down to 10 minutes, 30 minutes into this huge game. But I knew, my gut feeling was that he's off the ground, 2-footed, studs first, into the leg of Carrick. It's got to be a red card. And I got confirmation from the fourth official as well. And people said you probably got confirmation from Alex Ferguson. No, that's not true. But I sent him off, and Liverpool were down to 10 men. Now, at half time, one of the ways that we would be able to work out how well we were doing on a live game was to look at where one of the cameramen goes. The Sky cameraman with the camera on his shoulder, the steady cam man. He's there to take action shots of the game. He's also a New York Yankees fan in this case. Take action shots of the action of the game. And at half time, the producer says in his earpiece, get onto the field and zoom in on the key participant so far. And when he runs onto the field, you hope that he's going to zoom in on the goal scorer or the captain or the goalkeeper who's played particularly well. But when he goes past all of those and shoves his camera into your face as the ref, you know it's not a good sign, because all they're talking about is the controversy that's happened. And you don't want to be in the middle of controversy as a referee. You really don't. But sometimes it finds you. It doesn't mean you're wrong. People will say to you that the best referees are the ones that you don't notice. And that's true. That's absolutely true. But it's only true if the game allows you not to be noticed. If you go into the game with the intention of not being noticed, then you end up creating a situation where you become noticed through inactiveness, through not doing the job you've been sent there to do. So the best referees are not the ones that you don't notice, really. The best referees are the ones that are seen and heard when the game needs them to be seen and heard. So I sometimes found myself in situations in my career where I was getting close to selection for the World Cup or the European Championships, and I was desperate not to make a mistake. And I'd go into a game hoping not to be on the radar, not to be talked about, and I wouldn't make a big decision that needed to be made. And that was the spotlight. So never go into a game thinking, I don't want to be noticed today. Go into the game thinking, I've got the courage to step up and make a big decision if I need to. I've prepared properly, I'm ready from the first whistle, and I've got trust and belief in my gut feelings here. I'm going to do all the things I know about moving into the right position to make the right decision, using my explosive pace, all that sort of thing that we work on. And I will make that big decision. If it's right, I'll drop back into the background. In this case, I was in the spotlight for the wrong reason. I knew that when the camera zoomed in on my face. The game finished 1-0 to Manchester United, and Barbel posted this picture after the game on the internet, which kind of like went viral. And even now, whenever Manchester United play, social media goes wild if there's a decision that goes in their favour. You know, oh, Manchester United have replaced Howard Webb on their roster with Anthony Taylor or Martin Atkinson. Or I'll check into a hotel in England and they'll say it's great to have a Manchester United legend staying with us. And my kids are not called Wayne and Rio and Cristiano. My little kids at home. So just to put that to bed. But I guess it was, if I'm speaking really honestly, and I believe in speaking honestly, I think it probably was one of the things that sort of like expedited my departure from the Premier League, because by the time I'd been around for 11 or 12 years and done, nearly 300 games and refereed Manchester United 39 times, Arsenal 32 times, this sense that I was biased or proving not to be biased by going against a particular club, it became a bit of a burden. And I was going into games hoping that there wouldn't be a big controversial call to make. And I remember Alex Ferguson said after one particular game near the end of my career, well, yes, we should have had a penalty, but Howard Webb was never going to give a penalty to Manchester United unless somebody's leg was lying on the floor. And, he was saying he was aware of the suggestion that I favoured them. And it wasn't true. There was a number of situations where, controversial decisions went in their favour. But when you're refereeing those type of games on a regular basis, people do remember you build up a back catalogue of situations. So that's not really me. This is really me. This is me when I first started out on the left, and me how I kind of like finished my career in 2014. I realised quite early on that if I wanted to stand out, I had to make a difference to the way that I was able to move around the field. I wanted to make a difference to the way that I was perceived on the field. Perception is so important in refereeing, more important than reality quite often. There's not a lot of difference between the quality of decision-making at each level that you're at, but there is a difference in the way that those decisions are received by players, which means control or no control, acceptance or no acceptance. And I realised that I needed to be able to sell myself and my decisions in a better way. So I worked hard on my physique, I worked hard on my athleticism, and people said, you had presence on the field, and I don't put that down really to being 6'2" with a shaved head. There's referees who have got presence without being that size. Referees can have presence in all sorts of different ways. Cüneyt Çakır from Turkey, only a short guy, but got a lot of strong facial expressions that really do sell what he wants to sell on the field. And I remember a referee from England called Paul Durkin, a small guy, had a lot of presence on the field. So you don't have to be tall and big and muscular. You can work to your own strengths to get acceptance. I started refereeing simply because I had a passion and love for the game, hoped to be a player like so many other kids. Wanted to be a World Cup winning captain for England, not realising at the age of 7 or 8 how difficult that ambition would be to achieve, being English. Easier, I suppose, being English than being Canadian. I'm sorry, but still difficult. Tried hard to be a player, but at the age of 15 or 16, it was obvious I didn't have the God-given talent to make it. And my dad, who was always been a big supporter, spoke to me when I was about 17 and said, Howard, you're not going to make it as a player, clearly. You're not very good. Have you thought about doing some refereeing? Because he'd become a referee himself when he retired from playing. And I said, Dad, I'm not really interested. When I think about referees in my mind's eye, I think about bald old men, which is what I've become some years later. But after giving it some thought, I thought it might be quite nice for a young guy like me to become a ref, something a bit different. I could stand out. And, within a few days of starting out, a few weeks of starting out, I realised that there was a road that could take me to the place I'd want to get to as a player, albeit in a different way. I passed my exam on the 19th of December, 1989, to become a qualified ref. I'd never blown a whistle in my life. I was 18 at the time. It was a bit like being given a driving licence, having never sat behind the wheel of a car. Quite bizarrely, but I took charge of my first game the week after. But, when I look back at that night on the 19th of December, 1989, in a training classroom up in Sheffield in Northern England, it was obvious and inevitable that somebody somewhere in the world was going to go on and take charge of the World Cup final in 2010. That person was alive and well somewhere. I didn't know it at the time, but was going to become the World Cup final ref that year. And it turned out to be me, this newly qualified ref who'd never blown a whistle in his life before, who had a passion for the game, didn't know where that journey was going to take him. But somebody will referee the 2030 World Cup final, somebody will referee the 34 World Cup final. You know, all these games will have officials and cup finals in your country, in your region, you know, in your competitions. So why shouldn't it be you? You know, amazing things happen in this ordinary game when things fall into place and you put yourself in a position to take advantage of good fortune. So the game's changed though. The game gets harder. It's harder for you guys who are looking for a promotion now than it was for me when I started it. Every generation gets better. I refereed the World Cup final almost 10 years ago. Unbelievable how that time has flown. When the game first started in the late 1800s, it wasn't meant to be this important. It was meant to be something to pass time. It wasn't meant to be this huge industry that it is now with so much at stake. Referees were brought in only when it was obvious that they needed somebody to handle differences on the field. At first, the two teams used to bring two umpires back in the late 1800s, and they would decide what the decision would be. If they disagreed, they realised they needed somebody to refer the decision to, so they brought in a third person, the referee, to refer to. And after a while, they just thought, let's put him on the field. So they put the referee on the field. That was the birth of the ref. But it wasn't meant to be this important. The referee at that time had a whistle, had no red and yellow cards, and had their personality. We don't have much more now. We have red and yellow cards, we have a whistle, we have our personality. It's the personality that sets the good from the great, the way that you use that. These days, it's something quite different. It's an industry that's worth billions of dollars and played in unbelievable facilities with, you know, the best equipment and the best athletes, and the referees have to be athletes as well when they're on the field of play. The game gets quicker and faster, and you've got to be able to keep pace. You know, these are genuine stats that come from MLS, showing the amount of high-speed running that referees do in meters per game. In 2014, it was sitting at 422, and a high-speed run is 4.1 meters per second up to 5 meters a second over a period of at least a few meters. I can't remember exactly how many, but that number between 2014 and 2018 went up to 689. That's an increase of 63%. I mean, that's taking some doing, you know, and that's to keep pace with the increases that the players are putting out there as well. And you've got to be in a physical condition to be able to get from A to B in a way where you're not thinking about your legs. You're thinking about the decision that you've got to make. You're thinking about the position that you're going to take. You're thinking about keeping your head up and scanning and looking and reading the game. And you're not thinking about, my lungs are killing me, my legs are killing me. And then when you get from box to box in the 90th minute and you have to make a big decision, you've got to sell it. You can't stand there bent double going, give me a minute, breathing heavily. Nobody's going to believe you when you're in that state. So you've got to have the ability to get from A to B without thinking about how you're going to even do it. And that's the level that you need to be at. To get in the right position to make the best decision, you increase your chances massively when you do that, and to also be able to sell the decision when you get there. But people, all of these things are true. The game is getting faster and harder and more demand. But people have a warped vision of the past, and they think that the previous generations were better than the current ones. It's not true. They weren't better. And I've got a video to prove it. And I'm going to share this video, but I'm going to stop sharing and optimize my screen share so that you can see it better, because I'm really all over this Zoom thing nowadays. I'm going to show you a clip from Italia 90, the World Cup that took place 30 years ago. I re-refereed the opening game for FIFA.com a few days ago between Cameroon and Argentina. I remember this tournament well. It seemed to be a good tournament to me. I just qualified as a ref. I don't remember the refereeing being particularly bad. But I'm going to show you a clip from the third place game between England and Italy. And obviously an honours game, an important game. And a goal is disallowed just before half-time that's scored by Nicola Berti. He loops a header over Peter Shilton. And the goal is disallowed for offside, and Berti's not happy. And when you look at the replay, you'll see why he wasn't happy. The quality of the video is not very good, but you'll get the gist.
Effettuata a beneficio di Bergomi, collaborazione Bergomi Baggio, un lungo cross verso Berti, gol ancora e diventa trionfo. La partita si conclude con un gol di Berti che però viene annullato per fuorigioco. Annullato per fuorigioco il gol di Berti al termine di una delle azioni comunque più belle coralmente, la stiamo rivedendo, anche se il gol è stato annullato, comunque non fa niente.
So Berti was onside by about 7 yards, played on by 4 England defenders. If you ask somebody like Chris now, he'll tell you that we expect offside decision accuracy on every situation, and if our assistant referees get something wrong by 2 or 3 centimetres, they are kicking themselves. They expect to get things right. Standards are so much better than they were before. This is because this assistant referee wasn't an assistant. He was a linesman. He wasn't even a linesman. Most weeks, he was a ref doing his job in the middle with a whistle. And he was thrown into that game as a thank you and was watching the game. Wasn't doing what assistants have to do, and that's focus on the secondary most defender for the vast majority of their time, just scanning and sensing and feeling when that ball's coming, doing these unbelievable two things at once, 40 yards apart. Assistants are amazing at what they do, and this shows it. So what happened? So we obviously had to make a change. So I'm going to come back out of the optimization and we'll go back to the pictures, which I know you're loving. And you'll see what happened is this type of character was introduced. Darren Cann and Mike Malarkey, my two assistants who worked with me at the World Cup in 2010 and the Champions League final as well in the same year. And these were specialists. These were experts at doing what that assistant in Italia United clearly wasn't able to do, and that's do the job of the assistant. These guys were so focused. This is a picture that was taken in Pretoria in June of 2010, so 10 years ago. And Darren at the back is still active on the Premier League now. Mike is in charge of all Premier League assistants, the guy at the front. This was one of those exercises, we've seen them before, where the ball is played through, the defence steps up, put their arm up, appeal for offside, and then the assistant has to make a judgment. You know, at the moment the ball was played, was the attacking player onside or offside, and then make a judgment. Do they carry on through with the attacker or do they raise the flag? And this is at the moment the ball is kicked, and this is the moment where the crossover happens, and this is the moment where they've got to make that decision. And they are in silhouette formation behind each other. So, for example, Mike has no idea what Darren's going to do, but just look at the symmetry. Look at the symmetry of the feet and the flags and the hands and the lean of the body and the head position. It's perfect. They're both thinking exactly the same way, doing things in exactly the right way to make an accurate decision. This stood out. This is why, in my opinion, we got the World Cup final just under 10 years ago, because FIFA could see that we were a team. They could see that we were giving everything to every training session. We weren't messing around. You know, yes, we socialised, we had fun when we were down there, but not everybody gave the same application, bizarrely, even at the World Cup. We were a good team. They trusted the team. The mistakes that were made down there in 2010 primarily were mistakes that were made by assistant referees. And if you think about Jorge Larionda going home when England scored against Germany and the ball was over the line, but it wasn't given. Their team went home pretty quickly after that. You know, Carlos Tevez was allowed to score an offside goal against Mexico, playing for Argentina. Roberto Rossetti, who's now in charge of UEFA referees, he was sent home pretty quickly afterwards because his assistant didn't see the offside. I was blessed. I had the best assistants, and teamwork is important. And having faith and trust in your team and doing things right. You know, looking back to that game in Old Trafford with Manchester United Liverpool, we probably didn't go into that game in a focused way that we should have done. We didn't go through the usual pre-match instructions. We got lazy, we got complacent. It taught us a lesson: do things right, no matter how many times you work together. Don't be all comfortable like I was before that game. You know, in a good vein of form. Do the basics right, and be ready from the first minute, which I wasn't in that case. So some other things that I think are really important, apart from, you know, having the teamwork, treating everybody properly, knowing roles and responsibilities, preparing properly, thinking, visualizing before the game, all those sort of things. I think you'll have understood already that if you've not met me before, that I've got a passion for the game. I've got a passion for this group of people that I'm speaking to today. I enjoy spending time with like-minded individuals who share their love for this game in the most difficult way possible in refereeing. There's so many people that like to criticize what we do, but we never do what we do. But I do think that to be successful in officiating, you've got to have a passion for the sport. Refereeing is not easy. It tests you. You can love it for most of the time, but you can also hate it at times as well. But you've got to have that love to get through those periods when you're not liking it. And without that passion, I don't think you're successful. And to be honest, I don't think you're successful in any form of or walk of life unless you're passionate. If you walk to school in the morning as a kid with your bag over your shoulder, dragging your feet, doing the bare minimum, you're probably not going to succeed. Or fulfill your potential. And the same at work. If you're doing the bare minimum, you've got to be passionate. You've got to care about what you're doing, and that's the only way to be successful. And I don't mean loving it all the time. You won't. If you care about it, you won't. But loving it most of the time. If you go through a long period where you don't like it, maybe it's time to think again. Vision is another thing. Now, I don't mean eyesight vision. I mean having the vision to think where your passion can go. Because I know there's people on this call today. It's an AGM. There's going to be people from all different sort of stages of life, different stages of their football career, and how they contribute to the game in important ways. But not everybody's going to be on the field, but a number certainly will be. And those who are have probably got ambitions to get further. And you've got to think to yourself, how do you set yourself apart? How do you stand out? How do you give yourself the best chance of success? What can you do? What do you need to sacrifice to be successful, to give you the best chance of being successful? And it's not about having the will to win. It's not about the will to win. Everybody's got the will to win. Nobody wants to be a failure. Nobody wants to be a disaster. Nobody wants to get out of bed in the morning and not succeed. It's more than that. It's something I saw actually painted on the wall at Stoke City. They're a club in the Championship in England. Stoke City's training facility. It said on the wall, just as you were walking out onto the training field, I went there to speak to the manager. He said, it's not the will to win that matters, because everybody's got that. It's the will to prepare to win. The will to prepare to win. And that's really true. It's having the desire and the will to do those hard yards when you don't feel like it. And feeling like it is really, it's a choice. It's an opinion. It's a decision that you have to make. Do you do it or do you not do it? Are you prepared to do those extra training sessions? Are you prepared to read the laws of the game so you've got it at your fingertips, so you know everything, every word, every piece of information in that book you need to know when you're under pressure on the field? Are you prepared to look at videos? Are you prepared to travel to games? Are you prepared to, just give yourself as much investment into your kind of personal referee bank as you can? Because when the pressure's on and the heat is on, you need to draw from your bank. You need to draw deep from all of those things that you've put in, those fitness levels in the last 10 minutes on a difficult day when the weather's bad and the pitch is heavy. Or that difficult decision that only comes up now and again, but you know the answer because you know the laws of the game, and actually you've thought in advance about what you would do in certain situations, so that it comes second nature to you. The preparation of your team, so that when a situation happens in that grey area between the two of you, you know who's looking at what. Or when there's that difficult situation where you've both got a part of the information to make an offside judgment involving offside position and interfering with an opponent. How are you going to get that information together? You've done all of those things before. So having that will to win is really not the key. It's having the will to prepare to win is the key to success. Self-belief is something you need as a referee. It has to run right through you from top to bottom. On the field of play, players will test your self-belief all of the time. They will appeal for things that they know they have no right to be awarded. A ball will hit a player, go out for a throw into the other team, and the first thing the player does is appeal for the throwing. So they're trying to make you make a mistake. And then when you do make mistakes, they go crazy at you. It's a really weird dynamic. You've got to be strong in your self-belief. You've got to be confident. I think to be successful, you have to have some element of ego, but not arrogance. Arrogance is not an attractive trait, but being confident, having lots of self-belief is really important in ensuring that you can be successful. And show that in your body language as well, even when inside you're doubting yourself a little bit. My dad he'd seen me referee so many games, he could tell if something was on my mind. I'm refereeing really great for 70 minutes, then there'd be a difficult decision, no VAR, the moment would pass, I wouldn't give the decision, and he could see that my shoulders dropped because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, was that right? I hope it's right. I hope it's right. I'd get a gut feeling about it. Normally that would be right. Wasn't always, but normally it was. But he could see the way that my body language reacted. Not everybody could. He could read me pretty well, but you've got to work on being an actor on the field as well. You've got to be resilient. You've got to expect bumps and knocks. You've got to experience those times where the game's not kind to you. That journey from where I started in '89 to the World Cup final in 2010 wasn't a straight line of success from A to B. It was up and down. It had some pretty deep troughs really along the way. But, each time I bounced back. I think probably 10 times in my career, I came home from a game and I threw my kit bag in the corner of the kitchen at home, after a difficult game and intending to quit at that point, thinking I've had enough. There's easier things to do. But then, a few days later, I'd have a chat with friends or my dad or whatever. And, I've got a passion for the game. And he would say, come on, go back out there and do it again. And I'd go and clean my boots and I'd referee the following week. And invariably it would go well. And, I'd move on from there. And I can remember thinking, I was stood in the tunnel in Johannesburg before the final in 2010 on the 11th of July. And I can remember thinking I was so glad that I'd picked my bag back up each time, because if I'd have left it at home in the kitchen just once and not gone back for it and quit, I'd have been watching that game on the TV at home with a billion other people, but not going out there to take charge of the World Cup final. And, again, it doesn't mean that everybody will do that, but there'll be things that you can achieve that are absolutely achievable, and they'll only be achievable if you continue, if you're resilient, if you accept there'll be ups and downs. And the only way you'll never make another mistake is to quit. But by doing so, you'll never, ever achieve anything. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about police officers at the moment, what happened in Minneapolis and all that sort of thing. I come from a policing background, and, you know, most police officers do a great job, and I was proud to be a part of that service, although I wasn't proud of what I saw in Minneapolis, of course. But the police officers who never got complained about by the public were the ones who never went out of the police station. The ones who went out and did their job properly would sometimes get complaints, because most complaints weren't valid. They're out there doing their job. So sometimes you have to go out there and attract a complaint because you're doing your job properly. People don't always like it. Same on the field. Go out there and make popular decisions when you have to. If it's right, you'll be back under the radar. And the last thing is courage. Just being a referee takes courage. It takes a lot of bravery. A lot of people wouldn't want to go out there and do it themselves. As I've said, it took courage to stand in the tunnel before the final. You've got to put your dreams above the fears of failure, for sure, and accept that you might fail, but be brave enough to go for it, and not be a coward who doesn't want to go for it. So those 5 things, I think, set you in really good stead. Of course, there's other things. There's physical fitness, there's knowledge of the laws, there's all those sort of things. There's communication. But I think within your person, you need to be passionate. You need to be prepared to sacrifice time and effort and see where this can take you. Have self-belief and resilience, or perseverance, and then have courage as well. I want to just close with a couple of clips, and I'm mindful of the time. I'm mindful it's now nearly 10 past. Darnell, are we okay for another sort of 10 minutes, do you think? Is that okay?
I'm sure it's fine, yes.
Cool, because I've got nowhere to go. The pub's shut, you know, the supermarket's open, but I don't want to go there, to be honest. Apart from that, you know, I'm staying in all night, so... And if it's boring, you can just go to your fridge or whatever. So I'm going to take you to just a couple of situations from my career that are, I think, fairly significant, really, and just try to bring some of these things together, if you like, and see how they worked in practice for me. The first game I'm going to take you to is the last ever game of my career, which took place in a place called Belo Horizonte in Brazil. It was a game between the host nation, Brazil, and Chile in the round of 16 World Cup 2014, the first knockout game of the World Cup that year. And clearly a big game. One, because it's the knockout of the World Cup. 2, because it involves Brazil in a World Cup being played in Brazil. And there was a lot of hype around every Brazilian game. You know, when we were in our hotel and Brazil were playing, even though we were just watching it in the hotel in Rio, every time Brazil scored, fireworks went off. You could hear them around the hotel during the group stage. And then when they won the game, the fireworks went off for 10 minutes. You know, it was like, it's such a religion down there. You know, it's hard to explain. It means everything. And when I'm assigned to this game, it's like, yeah, great assignment. I love it. And I had a sense it might be my last game, because I knew I was going to retire at the end of the World Cup. So I thought, not a bad way to go out. I'd like another game later in the tournament, but, you know, might not happen. It didn't happen, as it turned out. You try not to look on social media before games. In fact, I would advise people, don't look at social media at all. It's not a place to go if you want to confirm how good a referee you are. I know a lot of people do. I know top referees on the Premier League or elsewhere, they'll search their name on Twitter looking for nice things that are said about them. It's a really bogus thing to do, because for every nice thing that you see, you'll see a lot of crap that's not representative of you as a performer on the field or as a person. It's just a toxic place in many ways. But even though you don't go looking for stuff, sometimes it can find you. You can find you. People text you. So I remember the night before this game, I got a message from a friend of mine saying, I can't believe what the coach of Chile has said. He said the only way that Chile could win this game is if the referee is strong enough to stand up to Brazil. And then Phil Scolari, the coach of Brazil, said in response to that, we are Brazil. How insulting and offensive. We don't need the referee to play for us. We are Brazil. So I didn't want to know that, but I got to know about it the night before. I went into this game, and you know, don't you? You know that the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the game are really crucial. You know that the first yellow card is a really important time. It's a benchmark moment in your control of the game. You don't want to pitch it in the wrong place. You don't want to waste a yellow card if you don't need to use it. You don't want to fire that kind of those. You only got a certain number of bullets, and you don't want to fire them too soon. And you know, you try to pick the right one. But equally, not cautioning can create a risk. And in the very first 20 seconds of this game, Fernandinho who you can see there, commits a late foul on the Chilean player, the 20 on the floor. And I know it's close to a caution. And I'm trying to put out of mind this thing about, Chile want the referee to be strong and Brazil, are offended by this, but they're aware of it. And I'm thinking, if I go in wrong here, if I go in too early with a yellow card, something that's not worthy of a yellow, then the Brazilians are going to think, oh yeah, he's just trying to show that he's prepared to stand up to us. And they might become difficult to manage. And if I don't caution and just advise Fernandinho, and then if the next challenge 2 minutes later is clearly a yellow card, and it's by a Chilean player, I've got real problems for the rest of the game if I caution that Chilean player. Because suddenly everything that the Chileans are thinking about before the game, about preconceived ideas, all comes true in their mind. The referee is a homer, looking after the home team, favouring Brazil. So this is a big moment, and I'm thinking, is the tackle at the level where it's, manageable? Is it one where I can use strong body language, sell the message without resorting to the yellow card? And would I be prepared to accept another one like this from the Chileans? And with a little bit more, is there a little bit of room for the next one to be even worse and still be manageable? And I made the judgment that it was. So I warned Fernandinho, big, strong body language. I was still hopeful coming out of that the next challenge by a Chilean player wasn't way beyond manageability, because then I've got a problem. If it's massively away out of manageability, then I'm probably okay, because everybody sees it's clearly a yellow card. Chileans might still not like it. But the next challenge was by the player that you can see, Gary Medel, number 17, played at Cardiff City at the time, so I knew Gary Medel, and it was on Neymar about 3 minutes later. And it was a strong challenge, but it was within that range of manageability, thank goodness. So I was able to give him a warning and say, okay, you've had one over there, you had one there. And the game then was sort of like balanced. I was free then to go where I wanted to go with the next decision. But refereeing is a little bit about risk taking. It's about assessing that risk, evaluating it, think about what can happen next. And if you, for example, if you're going to keep a player on who could be a second yellow carded, could be, he puts a challenging while on a yellow card, and you're thinking, this could be yellow carded. If you're thinking to yourself, if you don't second yellow him, but then you're thinking to yourself for the rest of the game, please don't let that player score, you've probably made the wrong decision. Don't take too much risk. Don't take the stupidity of players onto your shoulders. I say that to the MLS referees all the time. When a team goes home, if a player's being sent off, make sure he's the villain. Make sure everybody thinks, what a fool you've been. So again, just think about those type of things when you risk assessing, because you have to risk assess and you have to take some chances a little bit from time to time. But understanding which is the right ones to go for is what makes the difference. So what happened then? Well, 1-1, 51 minutes into the game. Throughout the tournament, we've been told to be proactive in our movement, to be thinking like a number 10, to think like a player. Don't think like a spectator. Don't do what the guy did in Italia 90, watch the ball. No, read the play, read the players. Think about where the next stage is going to be, the next step. So, when you can see a player shaping to play the ball long, don't watch him do it. Move, go, get out of there so you're in position to make the next decision. And it can hurt your head, but we did pretty well, and I was working hard to do that. But in the 51st minute, with Marcelo on the ball, I got caught ball watching, because I'm there, he's moving forward, and he shapes to put a cross over to his colleague, centre forward called Hulk. And I didn't really read that quickly enough. So instead of moving early, I moved late. And suddenly, if I'm being 7 yards from the ball, I'm about 27 yards away when Hulk controls it. He controls it with something which causes the ball to drop like a stone to his foot. Every sinew in my body told me he cannot have chested that. There's no way he's controlled the ball without creating a right angle. He must have handled it. He must have. But I was a long way away without the optimum viewing position. I didn't see it. Didn't see enough to be sure. I looked over to my assistant. At this point, I'm about 85, 90% sure it's handball. I looked over to my assistant, Mike Malarkey. He's going to give it. He's close by. Nothing. He's got his flag down. He's running. He's continuing towards the goal line. I think, oh my goodness. My 80 or 90% certainty has gone down to about 80 or 75 now. I think, what do I do? I'm thinking, well, Hulk is not the greatest centre forward of all time. So, he's probably going to put it wide. I'll let him shoot. I'll give a goal kick. And nobody's any wiser. He didn't. he kind of like hit it with his shin, and it bobbled past Claudio Bravo in the goal for Chile. It nestled in the back of the goal. I looked at Hulk. I thought, look at me, because if you're looking at me, you know you've got some doubt about the goal. He never looked at me. He wheeled away to celebrate. 60,000 Brazilians went crazy in the stands. I know 200 million are going crazy at home as well. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what do I do? I am so sure in my gut that this is a handball. It has to be. The way the balls behave, my knowledge of physics in the game tells me it has to be. But do I have enough information? Do I trust the gut feeling? Do I give goal? An easy decision, of course, easy decision. Or do I trust my feelings and go handball? And it seemed to last for about 10 seconds, that thought process. It lasted for about a second or two. As I'm weighing it up, 2 or 3 Chilean players from different areas ran at me and pointed to their arm. And you might say, well, they would do, wouldn't they? But they did it in such a natural, immediate way, without time to consult, that was the balance tipper for me. That was enough to make me realise I wasn't the only fool who didn't think this was handball, who didn't think this was a clean goal. And it was enough for me to go with the handball decision. And I disallowed the goal. And there's a message there about player reactions, because you can't say publicly to people too much that we do react to players, because that's dangerous, because people then start to orchestrate reactions. No, it's not about that. It's about natural reactions. It's about the immediate reactions. It's about reading players. They can really give you the answer. And good referees know the difference between orchestration and natural reactions, because you learn to read those. And I looked at Hull because I cautioned him for unsporting behaviour, and I thought, if this is the correct decision, I'll be okay. If it's a wrong one, Hulk will probably double in size, turn green, rip his shirt off, and attack me. Hulk, it's a joke, obviously. But he didn't. He sort of like waved his arm a bit nonchalantly. And even though, I'd followed my gut and knew from experience it was the right thing to do, I still had that doubt in my mind, of course, because I've not seen as much as I wanted to see. But Fred, the other attacker for Brazil, he looked at me, he said, handball? I said, handball, and he winked. At which point I said, yes. I said to Darren on the radio, Darren Cam, my assistant, I think we're okay. I think it's a good decision. Again, what I learned was that you can't always rely on having 100% of the information. You can't. If you always wait to get 100% of the information, you'll play on too many times to make it to the top level. You've got to sometimes trust your gut feeling and go with that. But there's still that little bit of a doubt in my mind. And the game went through. It was 1-1 at the time. It finished 1-1 after 90 minutes. It went to extra time. It finished 1-1 after extra time. And it went to penalties. And I knew that my passage in life would be a little bit smoother if Brazil won that penalty shootout. But I didn't care who won. I just knew that I'd get out of the city alive. But you can't control it. Brazil did win the penalty shootout. They did. And Phil Scolari, the coach, came up to me and said, "Hey, Webb, you're the best." I thought, yeah, you wouldn't have said that if you'd have lost. But we walked off the field, down the steps towards the tunnel, towards the locker room. I was met by the head of the Brazilian media, who said to me, the media department of the federation, he said 3 words. He looked at me, he said, "Can you imagine?" And then walked off. So by the time I got back to my locker room, I'd worked out that "can you imagine" means, can you imagine if you disallowed a perfectly good goal for Brazil in the World Cup in Brazil, and that would have cost us our place in the quarterfinals? Can you imagine the world of pain you would be suffering right now? So I've convinced myself by the time I get into the locker room, I've got it wrong. So as you do on a live TV game, you go scrambling for the mobile phone, the cell phone, you get it out of your jacket, you put the PIN number in, because you know that when you've had a good game, you've got lots and lots of messages. And when it's gone badly, you've only got one from your mum saying, "I still love you." So I'm tipping away on my phone, and I'm seeing message after message after message. And the first one says, from a good friend of mine, says, "Howard, great performance, and what a wonderful decision by Mike Malarkey to cancel the goal for offside." At which point I texted back saying, "It was my decision. It would have been his if it had been wrong." But it was a good call. And it was one that was based on reading of the game in terms of understanding the mechanics of it, poor movement and anticipation on my part in terms of movement, but then having the strength of courage to follow my gut feeling and reading the play reaction a little bit as well. And I'm going to show you the video now, and I'm going to optimize the video and see if we can get this to work. And you can make your own judgment.
David Luiz gets away with that. Marcelo lays it in. Here's Hulk, who rolls it in. I think he used his hands here. I don't think this is going to count. It's not. Well, the celebrations all around the stadium, but they're going to be brought to a halt here because Hulk just used his hands to control it, and the referee from a distance saw that. So Hulk gets a yellow card instead of a pat on the back. Have a look at this again. Ooh, did he? Did he?
Of course he did. Be clear. So that was the last big decision of my active career, and you need to be a bit lucky, I guess. I'm just going to finish with a little touch on the World Cup in 2010. Just go back, just only because it's coming up to its 10th anniversary. It kind of like does define you as a ref, I guess, if you get assigned to this sort of game. Doesn't mean I'm the best referee in the world ever. It clearly wasn't, but I worked hard and had a great team around me, and took advantage of a lot of good fortune, but worked hard to take that advantage. The game that got me the final down in Johannesburg, I think, was the round of 16 game, which ironically enough was the same two teams, Brazil and Chile. So I did the same game at the same stage on the same day in June, 4 years apart. And Brazil won that one as well. It was a much more straightforward game. Part of the preparation I put into that particular game was speaking to this guy, Horacio Elizondo from Argentina, who sent off Zidane in 2006 in the Olympic Stadium in Berlin for headbutting Materazzi. He was one of our instructors. I spoke to him before the game. I said, Horacio, two South American teams. I'm from England, never refereed two South American teams against each other before. We spent about half an hour talking about body language and eye contact and that sort of thing. And, how to impose myself on the game that would be accepted by players, some of whom I was familiar with from the Premier League, of course, but playing together in their national team could behave differently. And the game went really, really well. I saw him in the hotel the day after. And he said, Howard, the game went really well. He said, but I've got one more piece of advice. He said, when you show a yellow card, I don't know if you can see the webcam, but I'm holding a yellow card up. He says, you're holding it up like this. I'm holding it in front of my face. I thought, how else can you show a yellow card? He said, this is a piece of yellow plastic that communicates to the world that the player is being cautioned. But when you caution a player, it's your eyes that send the message to the player that this is the line. So show your card like this to the side and maintain eye contact. And that was really great advice, because in my next game, in the final, I had 14 opportunities to practice that technique, because it was the hardest game of my career, undoubtedly. People said it would be beautiful. Spain, tiki-taki football, the best team in the world at the time, playing against the Netherlands, who invented total football in the 70s under Johan Cruyff, and still knew how to play the game beautifully. But this is the World Cup final. Often games are not that beautiful. It was harder than I ever imagined. The players reacted in a way that was a little bit different to what you normally expect. People ask me about this all the time. Of course, it's a red card. Of course, VAR would have picked it up. Of course, I made a big error in the first half by not cautioning. I didn't expect that De Jong would tackle like this. I was looking over the shoulder of Alonso. I knew he was late. His leg collapses quickly in, so very quickly the bodies come together. And I'd like to stand here now or sit here now and say I was pretty close to sending him off. I wasn't. I didn't get that gut feeling. For me, it was a late, heavy collision that was worthy of a yellow card. My colleagues were focusing on other aspects of their duty. Darren was closest, but the header by Alonso went to David Villa, who was close to being offside, really close, who would have had a great advantage. Darren was looking for that. I blew because I knew that the heaviness of the challenge wasn't one I wanted to take a risk of playing advantage on, but I didn't know it was a red card at that time. And obviously disappointing to see that later. But it was hard. But I learned from previous games that, the one thing you can't do as a referee is hide. And if the only one thing you take away from this talk is the knowledge that you're going to have difficult games where when you're blowing the whistle, you're getting negative reactions and it's hard and it's a slog. The worst thing you can ever do is stop blowing the whistle when you should do, just because it's hard. Keep doing the job you've been sent there to do, because that's just a surefire way of making sure the tempo gets higher. The only real game I lost control of in the Premier League was Everton against Bolton in 2004, and that's because it was hard. And I did my job in the first 20 minutes, but it was difficult, and I stopped blowing the whistle after about 25 in the way that I should have done. I started to hide, and the game went away from me. It was a disaster. And I learned from that game at Everton that day, because I kept blowing my whistle in Johannesburg, kept doing the job I've been sent there to do, but it was the hardest game of my career. I want to share one more video with you. And a film was being made of the final by FIFA. The FIFA World Cup film was called Match 64 this time in 2010. follow different participants, including us. And I forgot they were going to film us at half time. I forgot the camera was there. But I'm going to optimize this and share the film from the halftime locker room in the World Cup final, which shows the sort of like the stress that I was. You can see my grimace on my face, a bit like when I cautioned Hulk had a bit of a grimace. It's like an unconscious sort of tick, if you like, but when I'm under stress. But you'll see that I'm under quite a bit of stress because this game is the World Cup final. It's gonna create a legacy, I guess, for all the participants and players and me included. And it's really a difficult game to control.
It's not for you lot, but that's tough first half. Some first half. I don't think I've anywhere to go with it. I've anywhere to go with it. He's got to keep doing the job.
Just confirm the details I've got.
Yep.
Orange 9,
Yep.
6,
Yep.
and 8.
Yes.
Blue 5 and 15.
Names for them as well.
Yeah, it's Van Persie,
Yeah.
Van Bommel,
Yeah.
De Jong,
De Jong, yeah.
Puyol, and Ramos.
Feel good, yeah. Feel good, yeah. It's not physically, it's not difficult. It's more difficult mentally. It's not beautiful, is it? It's not beautiful. Oh, it's got to do our job. Do our job.
So at the end there, you'll hear me say, just do our job, and I meant that. Just always keep doing your job when it's tough, you know. And we came through it in the end in okay kind of shape. I just want to finish on very high. Just over 10 years ago, I refereed the Champions League final. It was 10 days before we went down to South Africa. It was 50 days before the World Cup final. I was fortunate that things fell into place, giving me an opportunity to do both games. England not making the final, which was a big surprise. In South Africa, not. But also knowing this team's making the Champions League final was a big surprise for the first time in 6 years. Knowing this team made the semi-finals, in fact, and I was given an opportunity to do the final. Inter Milan against Bayern Munich in the Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid. The first time the Champions League had been played on a Saturday night. I'm just going to share you one little anecdote to finish, which brings things a little bit together at the end. But first of all, in the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, if you've been to Madrid, you might have been on a tour of the stadium. You might have been there for a game. I don't know. I'd recommend you to go. It's a cathedral of football. It's been renovated as we speak, actually. But 80,000, 5 tiers, really steep. You know, everybody's got a great view and they're close to the field. The locker rooms are set quite high up in this stand where the camera is. So when you come out of the locker room, you go down 23 steps to get to pitch level. So at 8:25 that night in May 2010, I've pressed the bell for the team to come out. I've gone onto a landing at the top of the steps, and out of the door to the left came the red and white striped players of Bayern Munich, and out of the door to my right came the black and blue striped players from Inter Milan, and they're lining up and waiting with me to go down these 23 steps on the cue from the TV producer. And then before that happens, another door opens, and out onto this landing, this area at the top of the stairs, come 23 little kids, little Spanish kids aged about 7 or 8, and 11 are in Bayern Munich kit, and 11 are in Inter Milan kit, and they're the player escorts, having the time of their life, you know, something they're going to look back on forever with pride. And the 23rd kid was wearing a referee's kit, and he turned up that night to be the player escort for one of his heroes, Wesley Sneijder, Samuel Eto'o, Diego Milito, to be told on arrival he was going to be the referee escort for Howard Webb. Howard who? And I thought that was a short straw. I thought it was the shortest of short straws till I actually looked further and could see 2 more little assistant referees come round the corner as well. But I held his hand and I walked down the steps, and we got to the bottom of the steps, and we started walking along the red carpet that you can see on that picture. And just as you walk along the red carpet, you can see there's a black podium, and on there is the silver trophy, the Champions League. But when I walked up to it, it wasn't on. As we got closer, from within the podium, up came that silver trophy, the big trophy, the big ears, the UEFA Champions League trophy. And I could see my face in the reflection of the Champions League trophy. And I'm wearing a referee's kit. I'm about to referee the Champions League final. And I was a failed footballer from the north of England, from Rotherham in the north of England. And amazing things happen to ordinary people in this sport. When you've got a passion, when you've got a vision, and you keep yourself belief, you have resilience and perseverance, and you've got the courage to put your dreams above the fears of failure. And we're honoured and privileged to be a part of this great sport. I feel honoured and privileged to spend some time with you guys tonight. Thank you for allowing me to share my journey, and I have no idea how much I've blown the entire timeline up for your AGM. I'm happy to take any questions. I'll hand it over to you guys to control that, but just wish you well for, you know, coming out of this lockdown and this period and back onto the field, and wish you well for your careers in whatever role you've got. I hope you find fulfillment and satisfaction and enjoy the part that you play. Thanks, Donald.
I think the thanks is to you, Howard. It's been an absolute pleasure having you speak to us. I think that time-wise, we're pretty short on time. We're ways over, and the AGM could go on forever, as they have a tendency to do. So I think we're going to end it here. But I really do appreciate you coming to speak to us and providing us the insight to help our own refereeing careers blossom, shall we say. With that, yeah, have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. And again, the biggest failing I've got is timekeeping. So I'm more than happy to come on, and if you have any educational instructional webinars, or next time I'm up in your part of the world watching the Whitecaps, then maybe we can get together and we'll answer some of the questions, and maybe focusing on a particular topic and do something extra as well. I'll be more than happy to do that, because I can fly around the country at somebody else's expense. So let's make that happen at some point. And yeah, I'll leave you to AGM. Good luck, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. And with that, we return to the more